Work on that next month, whatever.
I'd like to call this planning board meeting, January 8th, 2020 to order. We have a quorum, Ted, John, Sarah, myself, Barbara. We have our trustee secretary, Susan, and Max, our town planner, and Bill, town advisor, and, yeah. Helper, key helper. I'd like to entertain a motion to adjust the agenda as printed to move the Ice Pond Road subdivision amendment first and put, as item 4, and put the minutes review to the end.
So moved.
Is there a second? Are there any other amendments or suggestions for the agenda? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carried. Are there any, since there are a number of citizens here today, are there any citizens' comments that have nothing to do with the two applications for tonight, which is Ice Pond Road and the East Ridge Mobile Home Park? If your comments are relative to those two, we're going to cover them, and you'll get a chance to speak. Are there any other comments related to other things? Okay, there being none, we will go directly to Ice Pond Road subdivision amendment.
Good evening.
Hello.
My name is Doug Fitz. I'm the applicant on this.
Okay,
I have some handouts.
This is different than what we already have.
is this material that
If
you've
Max has
already?
made, if Max has made all the copies, I'm grateful to him.
Perfect, okay. So, thank you.
Do you have my cover letter of the
Yes.
application? You have my planning board letter, you have my preliminary soils tests.
Here, let me just take a quick, let's just take a
Okay,
quick,
so I have
make sure
10
we've got
copies if
everything.
anybody would like
We
one.
have that, we have that.
And then I was going to spread out a couple of maps, if I may.
Okay,
Yep.
you may.
May I bring a chair up? Is that okay?
Yes, you may. Yeah.
Back starts to hurt if I stand too long.
I understand that. I believe we have all of that. If something
Okay.
comes up, we can, when I made a mistake looking at that, we can deal with it.
So this is a larger plan. Perfect. And before I
Sorry you
open
all
up,
can't see this back there. You'll just have to bear with us.
so this is what I'm starting. This is 2001. I just thought, may I use your?
Yep.
I'm moving right in here. Yes.
Okay.
So this is a plan of the subdivision I originally did, the original notes. It's the one that was signed. And what I'm doing now is.
Are you the original owner?
I am. I did this in 2001. And I'm still on the board there. I've been the vice president forever. I don't want to be the president. And I've been involved with it ever since then. This is the land that we're talking about. I also own this piece in separate title. And so what I'm looking to do is take this piece and divide it into 3 lots. It has plenty of waterfront, it has plenty of acreage. I lost a little bit of the land to the new Hat Tide, where they come back and they check that. I believe I have 8.18 acres now. So this is a blow up of that lot. And then the below ones are the whole subdivision. And it's a little tougher to see what's going on there, but this is the whole thing blown up. My intention is to take this, and I'm going to ask the residents in there to accept that as a subdivision road. If that doesn't happen, then I will create a secondary private road inside a private road. All of the Ice Pond roads are not maintained by the town. but I feel like they are well-maintained. We have an active board, we have good reserve.
What's the significance of it being a subdivision road?
Right now, if I keep this the way it is, it's just a private way that these 3 lots will maintain. And I did I'm not sure if I gave this to Max or not, but this is my protective easements, covenants and such. And in that, I had given the ability to be subdivided at a later date. And so everybody agreed to that when they bought in. They bought it subject, excuse me, to these covenants.
When you
It's
say
been-
everybody, who's everybody?
Everybody who owns in here.
All these other
Yeah.
14
14
lots?
Yeah, actually, one of these lots is not a lot. This is common area.
Okay,
It's a nice little peninsula that's mowed, and you can get down to the water there.
okay.
So if you would have to build another private road, who finances it?
I will.
So you'll pay for that whole thing?
It's my intention this is already done, coming
Right.
into here, but it's done as a driveway.
Right.
Tony Lashley, you may know him, he's my road guy. He did the original roads, and he's gonna do this. I met with him this afternoon to have him look at this layout, and he said he thought it looked swell to him. I think the point is here that right now, this is the subdivision road, this is not.
That is not.
I intend next fall to ask my subdivision to accept this. If they don't, then I will make that a private
I see.
road for these lots within the subdivision. I think that's not the right outcome.
So it's like you have an association of these various people?
Here's our association
I see.
rules.
Yeah.
And these were given to the planning board in 2001.
Gotcha.
Do you see any complications with sewage disposal?
None. None.
You've got- you've got
Albert Frick, I've done septic designs on 2 of the lots.
Yes.
Albert Frick has perked everyone, and he says no problem for whatever size.
Reasonable
septic.
usage, yes.
Yes,
Household, yeah.
yeah.
12 months a year.
That's what everybody in there so far is, and
Good.
everybody's septics appear to work.
That's what we're looking, yes.
Yeah, I don't believe there's any issue with that. In fact, there's a letter in here, preliminary soils test on Ice Pond. We performed preliminary soils tests, and it's more than preliminary for half of them, because he's already designed the systems, and I have those designs with me if you'd like to look at them.
Just making sure the base is covered.
It says enclosed is a site plan illustrating the location of the test pits excavated along with the soil profile description. The soil is suitable in the area, and it lists four places as defined by the state of Maine subsurface water disposal rules. Complete subsurface wastewater disposal design systems are needed for permits to install. But basically, he's saying that, yes, we have the adequate soils. Good. And I intend to do those. When I develop this, I intend to put the driveways in and do the well and the septic.
With the Madomic River, we have sense of that direction.
I can imagine.
Could I go back to this?
Sure.
The driveway switching to road for a second. So you said that you're going to ask the other subdivision owners to accept adding that to the other road in terms of the
to our
total
road system.
maintenance cost? And so in other words, they would then be sharing
Yes,
this
they
maintenance
would.
cost? But you said something that if they didn't accept that, there was something else that you would do.
Oh, if they don't, then I will, excuse me, I will form a road association that just is for these 3 lots.
Okay, and then they would share the additional cost of whatever that is
Then
doing?
it was just these lots
Correct.
would share that additional cost.
Okay.
I hope that isn't the right outcome for this, and if I had had a little more foresight when I wrote my protective covenants, easements, rights, restrictions, and reservations, I would have noted that if and when I subdivided this, that road piece could be in. So it was something that was brought up by one of the residents in there, and I believe I have multiple ways to deal with it.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
This adjacent lot here, What is this purple line?
This is actually a neighbor that I spoke with today. His name is Bruce Metrick, and that's his lot, and his house is right here. And he told me that he was in favor of what we were doing.
Is that the shape of his lot?
No, well,
What does that line signify,
this,
that purple line?
Just
Why
this is the
doesn't it go
property
to-
line.
Why
right?
doesn't it go to the water?
this
Green
is
line?
the property line. I think this
So
might
that's
be
the
his
blue line.
buildable area.
Oh, okay.
This one is much clearer. This has exactly the same stuff, but there's so much other stuff in it. He has lot 3,
it shows
and
right
I
there, too.
believe that's likely to be his buildable area. Here's mine on this,
Yep.
and so but to be honest with you, I'm not 100% on that.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure there was a neighbor there in any case.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
And here, maybe this. Let's see. This is in a different scale. These are 2-foot contours, by the way. If you're looking at it. And you can see there's my
Oh, it
neighbor's.
says here this is forest wetland. Okay, that section. Okay.
How big a houses are you designing the septics for?
I'm likely to design, well, I'm gonna do them at least 3-bedroom. The question is whether I do them 4-bedroom or not. And I've asked Tony Lash to give me a balance on that. If it's not a huge bump, I will design them for 4 bedrooms.
And you don't have to do anything extraordinary with the septic system that you know of?
No.
Any,
I
no
don't-
big jumps?
Don't
Okay.
believe so. I actually have, if you'd like to see it, designs for 2 of the systems. Well, yeah, get that out if I
No,
can
that's
find it.
okay, it's okay.
Okay.
Yep.
Do you have to be a certain distance from the actual ice pond?
Yes,
So that's,
yeah. I'm across the road from them and up quite a ways.
I got you.
From the ice pond itself. And by the way, the fire department has a pump out right here that we built when we did the subdivision. And they've come and utilized that a couple of times, for practice.
So did Max send us this information about road frontage earlier, and I'm just seeing it now?
No,
or
well,
were we
I'm just seeing
presented
it now, so
Okay,
I wanted to ask
so that's the next
Max and
question.
Jill about that, yes.
What's normal for a subdivision and on a private road? Do we have norms? That's what I don't understand.
Yeah, Max, could you,
You're talking about the sheet that I have there?
the rear lot access and frontage and the road access,
So this was something that I realized I didn't put in the original plan. Normally, for road frontage, you have to have a certain amount of feet of road on the front line of that property. But you'll notice that this proposal would have, whatever the cul-de-sac is. So the rear lot provision you have there is only a special case for subdivisions like what Mr. Fitz is presenting tonight.
okay.
Because as long as he's not interfering with the road frontage of his current lot, 16-1, then this should be,
Right.
this should be allowed.
This doesn't impact this lot, except that I will be taking some land from this lot to create this.
Right, to create the, right, this road access.
This
But
road
this lot's road access
This I granted
is over here.
I granted this lot a 36-foot wide easement. I'm gonna increase that to 50 feet to make it the same as my other subdivision roads.
Okay.
What you're looking at here, by the way, just to let you know, these are the tentative, let's see, this one. These are the tentative house sites where these houses are likely to go.
Yep.
These are the test pits that have passed muster, And these other ones, several of them are good as well, but they haven't been proven out yet. And this is the building envelope taking into account setbacks from lot lines and from the water. And on 2 of the 3, I've done, I've had a survey work done to delineate exactly where we could build to.
You're anticipating single-use wells for each one of these lots?
I'm anticipating 3 wells and 3 septic systems, and I intend to put those both in next spring.
And are you gonna build the houses yourself, or people are gonna buy the lot?
There's a good question.
Because it
15
seems,
years ago, I
Yeah.
would tell you that I was going to build them. I'm not sure now.
so you're kind of.
I'm inclined to, I've worked with a number of builders
Yeah,
in this area. I'm
Yeah.
likely to give a couple of them a call and say, how busy are you? And what I'm most likely to do is hang on to one for myself for the future and
Yeah.
sell the other 2.
That's it.
Maybe putting a garage on one that'll allow me to operate there while I'm doing all this in the next
So at
2
this
years.
point, though, you're still 50-50 about building all 3 houses
I-
before someone,
I wouldn't say that I'm 50-50. If you ask my wife, she'd say it's 90-10.
Okay.
And if you ask me, I have enjoyed building houses.
I see.
I've built maybe 20 in my life.
okay, fair enough.
Are you guys okay with this stuff? Because I haven't quite comprehended it. I mean, it seems like we're okay.
Does seem that
We
way.
have 279 linear feet that's being shared by 3 lots instead of 200 feet per lot. So this gives us an exemption by complying, if he meets all these other requirements, is that what this means?
I believe that that's what this means.
But I
Is
also
that-
read, Max, educate us, but there's a different requirement if you're on a cul-de-sac for the frontage?
There's a special section for, the cul-de-sac.
Oh, I'm sorry.
For dead-end streets. Because some just do a regular T-shape, but the plan has a cul-de-sac, and that's on page 427 of the ordinance.
Yep.
There's just different standards, one relating to what a cul-de-sac would require and what a T-turn would require. I believe I put the entire description for what a cul-de-sac requires in your summaries.
Matt?
Yeah, so that
Recent one?
describes the cul-de-sac itself, but there's nothing about how much frontage a lot has to have on a cul-de-sac to be a legitimate lot.
Other than the property lines, 65 feet. That's all I see.
75 feet,
65.
65. So as long as it has 65 feet of circumference on a cul-de-sac, it's, instead of the 200 you need if it was rectangular. Okay.
And this diameter of the cul-de-sac is just what the fire department, is this
Yes,
something
it was
specific?
suggested to me, and I'm trying to remember by who now, because it was a few months ago. I originally showed this as a T, and it was suggested to me that a cul-de-sac was more better. Yes.
Usable?
Okay.
Well, and the
I'm open to that. That isn't critical to me at all. It's,
So this is, give or take, around 100 feet diameter?
I would say that's accurate. And there'll be substantial driveways coming off of each one of these that would be a place that a fire truck can turn around as well. And likely, these 2 would be opposite each other, so you can do whatever you need.
Why did you decide not to continue the road down so you'd have, I mean, I'm just curious.
To where?
Well, you'd come down and turn directly into these properties and have the road
Oh,
frontage.
have this come into here?
Yeah. I'm just curious.
I don't have a good answer for that.
You have a lot of
I think
trees.
mostly because between Tony and my soils guy, this is what we ended up with as working. And I was hesitant to have more common road than necessary. I originally had envisioned this as just a driveway in from here. And then I realized that people don't want to share a driveway if they can avoid it. They'd like to have their own private piece of it. And it's going to give me a mighty long driveway into here, but the alternative would have been to bring something into here. I'm also chewing up my 8 whatever it is acres, and rather than it being able to give like a couple of 3-acre lots, I end up with 2 and change for each one.
Defined responsibility is very helpful.
The what?
Defined responsibility for driveways is very, very helpful. You
That's
don't-
true.
Don't need an argument.
That's, I agree with that. Yeah.
Well, if this wasn't reasonable relative to the ordinance, that would be a solution to have one lot, because that would be allowable to have a long driveway and they would all have long frontage, but it's not. This looks reasonable.
And I will build this to the same standard as the rest of the roads in there, with the same guy.
Max, 50 years from now, do you see any difficulty in maybe having some of this accepted by the town as town road?
Are you asking me if this will become the town road?
Maybe in the indefinite future?
No, because it's working off of, it's working off of Ice Pond.
Yes.
So,
Private,
It's not built to town specs.
that's what I was wondering.
No, they would remain a private road.
Just what I wanted clearly defined. Thank you.
Right. Well, we've been 20 years with it as a private road, and we're doing okay. So-
Well, things change.
Yeah.
And I should know this, but I don't. The flood zone, how does that work with rising sea levels?
We just had, and when I say just, about a year and a half ago, I had this whole piece resurveyed. And as a result of that, with the hat tide, highest annual tide, I lost about 1/5 of an acre of land. So I guess you could say I gained more waterfront, but I lost about 1/5 of an acre of high and dry. So
So it
Yes,
doesn't
I-
change in 20 years looking at the setback line or anything like that?
I think I'd hate to speak to 100 years, but I think in 20, this is 20 years from the last time it was done. So I did it originally, I think, in 2000, and now it was done in 2018, I think.
Yep.
And in fact, there's also an awful lot of art versus science in where they pick this line. So you could have 2 different guys doing it today. Now, I'm inclined to believe that this is as a result of true climate rise or hat tide rise. But it was also suggested to me to find another surveyor, and I might get back to my original numbers, and I just thought, this is what they got.
Well, and this isn't, these are 10-foot elevations.
No,
These are 10-foot.
2 foot.
2 foot.
2-foot lines, 2-foot elevation. So this is
It's relatively flat.
relatively flat.
But there's a significant drop on these to the water. You can see the lines coming across here.
And the only reason I bring that up is that you've got your buildings pretty close to your setback lines, which of course would be.
This is just an approximation.
Yeah.
This is drawn by my soils guy as to where I could put a house.
Right. And I just, by the time the house goes in and the septic goes in, the well goes in, you're gonna lose a lot of plantings up against the shore.
If you take a ride through the subdivision, you'll see that we've lost as little as possible. You lose most of it to what you have to do for the road. I try to go with minimum invasiveness for a house site.
Max, I have a question. You may have answered it, but so the road that you may have to make in, that's a different standard than the town has a standard of how to construct the road? So if you get 2 or 3 fire trucks, God forbid, going in a road that's not up to a town standard, who polices that?
well, there is still a standard for,
Private road.
yeah, in Doug's case, a minor private street.
Yes.
These standards are for emergency at least.
Yeah, for a road to be accepted as a public road, we have a higher standard because we're assuming it's a paved structure.
Of course.
So. But the quality of the road is for the sub-base and then the base. That's what provides the structure to handle vehicles over time. So, and they at least at a minimum do
Right.
that. It's the surface coat that would be gravel that would need to be, maintained.
And we do every year.
You got a question?
I assume you're well acquainted with the sensitivity to shoreline to major oak trees. And how many oaks do you have on your property?
Well, it's called Oak Point.
They all
so-
need to be carefully observed and made sure that they stay structurally sound.
Okay, thank you. We truly do try to keep, we have a tennis court here, but we have big trees all around, and the biggest issue we've had has been roots growing up into the tennis courts, and we just repaved it a year ago, because we didn't want to cut the trees down.
They are-
So,
In the state of Maine, they're fundamental to maintaining the shoreline.
yeah, yeah. Thank you.
Well, I don't have any more questions.
Yeah, are there any other questions or comments from the board? Before I go to further, are there any comments from the audience? So the only question I have for the board is whether any of these things that we've discussed are contingencies that the approval would be based on. We talked about the easement for the road, and how you plan to have that road maintenance, whether that's the full
I
board
will do
or
it
the
one way
thing.
or another.
One way or the other, but I'm struggling that that's a contingency.
I don't think so.
I don't
It's
see
okay
it as
either
one.
way.
Yeah,
So
so I don't,
it's really not,
so all the other issues of 3 or 4 bedroom and septic are going to be CEO approval. Is there anything though that anybody has for a contingency before I
Did you
call for
get-
a motion?
Did you get anything from the seasonal owners, any written comments?
I sent out notices to everyone who abuts that property, as well as anyone who abuts the private road of Ice Pond.
Yeah.
Doug said that he
I-
also sent out
I
notices.
sent notices to everybody in my subdivision, and one member is here right now.
And I was going to say, I heard, I think 2 people asked for an application, and one of the people said, this doesn't affect me, I don't need to.
Right.
Okay,
So the person, this is.
Subdivision is good with it?
Yep.
Is what it,
Well,
okay.
I don't know, we have one person who can talk.
please introduce yourself and,
Arlen Rowland, 181 Ice Pond Road. I happen to be the treasurer of the association.
Good.
But I'm speaking on behalf of myself, not on the behalf of the association. The covenants are very clear. I didn't hear a lot of this stuff, so I don't know if that's shared that. But lots 12 and 2 are specifically enunciated in terms of the developer's ability to subdivide. And every homeowner got those covenants, so it's not a surprise. We purchased in 2015. And as far as the wells and the septics or whatever, we've had no problem at all. We found Doug to be a very reputable, and what he says, he does. And he doesn't take any shortcuts, and he does over and above what he's asked. Personally, my wife and I support his ability and if he wants to subdivide, go ahead, I'll just make the development much better. Thank you.
okay, thank you.
So you said it was lots 12 and
The other one has already been done.
has already been, this one's gonna, so this will be the last one.
This is it.
in Ice Pond.
This is, the only way there can be another lot in here is with the unanimous consent of the homeowners. And the only place that it could happen would be this lot right here, which that theoretically, this is our entrance, and I had the opportunity to put a house there and decided instead that was good for common land. So we have a field when you drive in looking at the water.
Okay.
And I can't imagine that I'd even get that anyone would even get a majority of people that went along with letting that go. So it won't happen.
Well, I believe that information relative to the, I'm considering that letter that you sent that Max forwarded to us or gave us today as part of the application, which cites that originally
Sure.
12 was, which is confirmed by the.
Right.
But I'm considering that letter to be part of that
Certainly.
application, correct? Yeah, okay.
Certainly. And I'd be happy to leave you with a copy of my covenants if you had any interest. It's in your
I think we
records.
got a copy
Yeah,
already.
okay.
Let's-
Yeah.
we'll, If I can't sleep, maybe I'll read it.
Anything else? Could I have a motion to approve the Ice Pond Road application?
Motion.
Motion made, is there a second?
I second it.
Any further questions or comments? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good luck.
I'd like to thank Max. He shepherded me through this.
No, it was prepared information.
Appreciate the compliment, good.
Now drive safe.
You just need to
Am I
sign.
reading this, or?
Well,
are you
sign
signing?
it. Yeah, they
You
need
need
to
to
sign
sign
the 2
one of
plans.
them. This one's set up for it. Is this the best one? I saw another one.
Well, I did this in 2 formats. I thought this would be what you'd want.
These are the 2 that we need to sign.
So you want us to sign both of those? or just one?
Just because it's a subdivision, you need to be extra
Oh,
careful on this
gotcha.
one.
Okay.
But everything else.
Yes. Okay. I remember reading that from the small print. It's a little bit awkward without an empty table.
Are you aware that this will be sent to the registry of deeds in 90 days?
Okay, okay, I can do that.
Well, we can
Double.
It has to go to the registry within 90 days.
Right. Every day. 10 of them on the second.
Here we go.
No, on their case. What happens if I just down on
Yeah, I'll just look at
10 cents each?
The reason I asked that is I was getting my surveyor to bound this before I went to the registry. But
Yep, that's fine.
I'm gonna get that done in the next 90 days. But I guess it doesn't matter.
Some people want to try the registry.
Okay.
And I think the second one I keep right.
Yeah. At my age, it came back.
Two of these need to go to the registry. Okay. The 2 that are being signed.
Sometimes, it's gonna be a little more advice from you on what you had to it for exercise.
I'm telling you, I love working out, training.
Thinking I'll have to. Okay.
Things I want on top.
I'm glad.
Mr. Fitz, you are the original subdivider?
I
of
am.
Ice
I did
Pond?
this in 2001 with a partner and my wife. And yes, we've owned it since then. And I built a couple houses in there as well. Max, do you need a check from me?
Yeah, we can do this now. We can do it. When, They got the maps done.
Done and dusted.
How many full-time residents are in the subdivision?
About, I want to say 9 houses are built out of the 15. And there are a few lots left to be that some people have bought them for investment, but,
We can just pass that.
sure.
I was just
Just
curious.
so we can get to
Okay.
Yeah, I've been really happy. It's a good group, and they're both involved with the subdivision and involved with the town. A couple of them are specifically involved with the Waldo Theater.
Yep, my buddy Bruce.
Yes.
I am as well.
Bruce has tapped us well.
Yeah, good. And
Okay.
he'll probably be back.
Yeah, yes, I have no doubt. I spent probably 20 minutes this afternoon with Bruce, because he is the other guy on the other side of this driveway.
Yeah.
So,
Have you ever met my high school friend, Charles Drew?
Charles Drew. No,
Way back along, I think he owned the property you do, but it's been sold a long time ago.
Charles Drew.
dentist from-
Mostly it was bought from the Melanson Family Trust.
Yeah.
And then there were 2 other people who owned small pieces in there that we
Dr.
bought.
Drew is a dentist in Portland, retired.
Huh. I haven't been familiar. Maybe I saw that in an old deed.
Yeah, that's what it would be.
And then a third piece that was owned by the Jehovah's Witness Kingdom Hall of Natick, Massachusetts, which just, you know, where'd that come from?
Hometown.
I still don't know, but
Well, despite the fact that that was my hometown, I'm gonna have to
Natick.
call this, yeah.
I
but-
grew up in Framingham.
Oh, good. We've got to move on to this other
Yes,
application.
sorry about that. Thank you. Thank you all.
Welcome. Okay, next is East Ridge Adult Mobile Home Park. Mr. Bess, I'm assuming you are Mr. Bess?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Fred,
We'll see. I sent a letter with my request here for change the 55 age requirement that was on the plan. And at this point, too, I want to make the whole room aware we have a second matter that's just a kind of a bookkeeping error to plan error that I want to try to correct. So I want everybody to know that. Don't leave after we get done with this issue, okay? In the letter I gave, I pretty much outlined all my reasons, and that pretty much sums it up.
So, one question I had, it wasn't for, I don't know that any of us that were involved in the original, at the time of the original application. It's unclear to me what the 55 and over, you know, that 55 age restriction that was part of your application that was improved. What was the rationale and reasoning behind that? I'm not sure I
Okay,
understand
well,
why that was.
Okay, we came, this lady is about the only person that was around when I started with this. That's how long ago. We came in the day after 9/11, and at that point in time, I thought an adult park for people 55 or older would be a good park to have. And I had tenants down on the Goshen Road on mobile home lots. They weren't in a park, they're just on private lots, and I was renting those. And it seemed to be a demand, I guess. So I'll fast forward, took 6 years after we got approval to build the park, and we hit the recession in 2008. And I started getting some people that were 55 or older and other families that weren't 55. And I've got the paperwork here. 20% of the people in the park can be under 55. So now I'm at the point I can't take in any more people under 55. I'm turning people away that would like to be in the park. In some cases, they're all ages under 55. That's basically it.
Is this part of their lease agreement? The
There is
people-
no lease. It is in our park rules that you have to be 55 or older.
Yeah, so you have park rules that
Yep.
people know before they move there.
That's right. The other thing is, when I came to the town, they asked me about the park, and I told them I wanted to have an adult park, and somehow it ended up on the plan. It was required to be put on the plan. Under state law for mobile home parks, I can change the rules, except this rule, because it's on the plan. I can change just about any other rule in the park by giving the tenants 30 days' notice. And I probably should have never agreed to do this, but I've learned a lot since then about, you know.
So did I get from that that originally your concept for the park, that was a selling point, was to have 55 or older?
Well-
Is that fair?
I don't know if it was a selling point. I've never advertised it.
Okay.
I've had people come to me, and I've turned them down because I didn't have the room with the rules the way they are.
Mr. Best, did you gain anything by making it 80% and 20%? Was there any gain for you, or was there any requirement when you signed that? You know, I'm just wondering, why did you do that? Was there any benefit to you?
I just was telling the powers to be at that time, I intended to have a 55 or older park.
Right.
That was my intention.
Sure.
And then it got on the plan, so it became part of the requirements that I'm under. Okay, and then, so that's basically
It
answered
was,
it.
in the original discussion, was it a selling point to the planning board meeting?
I don't think
That
so.
it being an adult
That's kind
community?
of what I was,
I don't think it was a selling point. It just ended up on the rule, on the plan. Okay? In hindsight, I wish I'd never done it, but I didn't really, and it's taken this many years to get to this point where I'd like to change it, you know what I mean? So,
and any other mobile park in the area, do they?
they don't have this
They
requirement.
have not, so it's all first come,
Right.
first served?
And there's, looking back in the town ordinances, there was nothing in the ordinances that required this to be on the plan either. But I didn't have a problem because that's what I wanted to do at the time. So I was just going the way I was rowing, so to speak, you know?
Where on the minutes does it talk about, is this Max's highlighting that got copied
I
here?
believe so.
So does this point refer to in the minutes from that meeting?
I saw nothing about any of this,
Language stating
that the language is in there, but
privately
there
funded
wasn't
park.
anything in the old minutes that I saw. Max is not here.
It never really
That-
was a big
that
deal
was part
with the
of the-
planning board. There were
that-
plenty of other issues that they looked
Yeah.
at.
There wasn't a lot of discussion in the minutes about it that I saw. And there's quite an amount of material. Okay. For
Was
the-
there just one meeting? Are there
No,
minutes
there's
that we?
multiple, there's
But I mean,
multiple.
are there more minutes that we need to see?
Not that I, Max,
There's two sets of minutes
right.
that
There-
Max gave us.
Yeah, that's what
you've
I
given
thought.
us a couple of sets of minutes from the original time around the original application. There's nothing that you're aware of that we're missing in terms of, minute meetings, discussions about this issue.
The minutes I provided were mostly about the age requirement. There may have been some meetings that happened that the age just wasn't ever recognized.
Okay.
As I
So,
recall, there's nothing in the minutes that says the approval is contingent on that. It was just an accepted part of the whole application
I think
package.
the last set of minutes that say it was approved as such says it's an adult mobile home park. And then the map that I have also states that it's, well, and the park design plan states it's a privately funded park designed for persons 55 and older as described under chapter 8.
okay.
I'm just curious why you put 80 and 20. In Florida, for instance, they just have parks, you know,
Okay.
55 or over, and that's it. You-
Well, I didn't put this in, this has to do, I'll read this here. This is about fair housing, decent housing. That at least 80% of the dwellings are occupied by at least one person, 55 years of age or older per unit. So this,
And that's from,
pass that over.
It's the state regulation.
Yes, it's state law, so. And one of the things I think we did talk about was someone could be 55 and they could have a 20-year-old wife if they wanted to, and c'est la vie, so. I'll just bring up one other thing that's happened here. I rented a unit to a lot to a lady, and she has a son that's in, I think, his 30s. She passed away. Now he's there, and he's not 55 years old.
Will he be evicted?
No, I don't think so.
You'd hate to see people getting,
Well, I think
you
he's
know,
kind of grandfathered. The trailer came in with
I see.
his mother, but I'm not. There's nothing in state law that says you can evict somebody. It just would just make life simpler all the way around for me not to have this rule. And as I put in that letter, I'm 69 years old. I'm taking care of a 94-year-old mother. I expect to be in Florida, I hope, in the winter and within 5 years. I'd love to be, you know, and not up here running my car. I like to sell my park in those.
And that would be an attractive option to
Well,
you
and put it
as
on
a seller.
even ground with all the other mobile home parks here in Waldeboro. So,
So why are we looking at this? This specifically has the 80-20 rule about the one person 55 and older. This pertains to all mobile home parks?
Nope, just this one.
Just adults.
So this thing that came through the state is how this ended up on your plan.
yeah. And even if you do grant me approval to remove this, I still have to change my park rules. And then that goes in 30 days after the rules are changed. So,
And does that change anything for the people already living there?
I don't think so. And it's a free country, these are mobile homes, they can move them if they don't want to live in a park with more children. Or even people that are 45 years old, 50 years old.
It's not really gonna change, I mean, are you at capacity now, or do you have empty
No,
spots?
no, I'm not at capacity, but I've rented, I cannot rent any more homes to people under 55. I'll exceed the 20% of the lots in the park.
So you're getting much more people under that than you are people over 55.
Yes, but I'm still getting, I've got one gentleman who's moving in, whenever he can get his trailer moved in, that's over 55. So it's not a total,
I see.
you know, it's the whole spectrum of things. And I will say in all honesty, and some of the people in the park that are here tonight, I have evicted people that were in their 50s. I don't know if they were 55, I don't know their ages, but I evicted them for other reasons, you know.
Right. Yeah, it's just that housing, I mean, I'm from Portland and my daughters live in Portland. It's just, housing is just so difficult for young and old, you know?
Well, the one thing about mobile home parks here in Waldeboro and probably the whole Mid-Coast, I was a realtor for 18 years,
Right.
and I'm also a landlord that owns apartments.
Yeah.
And I don't believe anyone can live any cheaper than in a mobile home park in Waldeboro, except living with their parents somewhere else in the basement, I guess, you know? You know, it's $300 a month. It's very affordable housing.
So they're renting the space.
They're
and they
renting
own
the
their own-
lot.
And their own trailer, and they can.
They own their
do-
trailer,
Okay.
and, you know, they pay taxes
I
on
see.
their trailer if they have any tax liability.
I,
And they take care of their trailers, too. I don't take care of their trailers.
Right.
did you mean to say that you don't know how old the people are in the park?
No, I don't really know on all of them how old they are, no.
So how do we base this discussion if we don't really know what?
Well, I got a pretty good idea how old some of them are by how old their children are. So if their children are 30 years old and they were 20, they're 50, 55, they're right there.
Yeah.
Not exactly the same thing.
Yeah.
It's illegal to also ask people how old they are when they come to rent from you. It's kind of a strange set of rules the world has.
But it's part of the agreement they sign when they rent the space, isn't it?
No. They don't sign any agreement with me. I don't have any agreements with them.
Except the rules of the park, they're required to meet the rules of the park.
Correct.
So.
And I give them a copy of the rules if they want it.
Okay.
Okay?
And there's nowhere on the application that
And,
asks them.
and I also give them, we have rules on pets too.
Are they older?
There's no real advantage to signing leases with people in mobile home parks. There is no
Yeah,
advantage.
yeah.
And they make quite a commitment moving in too. They pay to have their trailer moved in, costs them over $1,000.
So if people have any relationship with the state in terms of where they're living or getting any help from the state doesn't care that they're, what type of, if they're within an elderly community or not?
No,
There's
I don't believe that's a factor. I don't believe it's a factor with the town either, is it? Do you know, people come in for help, their age doesn't matter, does it?
I wouldn't be the one to
Okay,
ask.
So.
So do we have any, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, if, for the moment, I think we may have more questions for you, but
Okay.
since there's a lot of people here,
Yeah.
I thought I would like to quickly switch to
Do you
the
mind if I
audience.
ask a question?
I don't mind at all.
I don't
Was
mind
there
it.
any design requirements of the subdivision as approved that were dependent on it being 55 years old as opposed to open enrollment?
I don't believe so, no.
Was there anything in the minutes? Do you remember?
I didn't see anything like that.
No, I think the age was just talked about constantly. However, I think as I say in the summary, there were some other concerns, the 50-foot buffer, the nitrate septic testing, a lot of which were very big items, and some of the waivers that were made. There was also well, I'll get to that in a minute, but.
A what?
I'll get to the third thing in a minute, but those two specifically, I don't know if that would have been any different if it was a regular mobile home park. And then the third one was brought to my attention last week, where originally this would have required recreation space, a big green space, but that was waived because this was specifically for people 55 or older.
Interesting.
Okay.
Is there any precedence for changing planning board approved plan 20 years later?
No, it's something that the board can consider, yeah. And the questions you would ask would be what we're asking right now. So what's the impact, if any? Were there any design changes that would have to be done because it's changing from this aspect to another?
Okay.
So Max, to continue on that third item, does that mean if the planning board decides to agree to remove the 55 and older restriction on the subdivision, that would come along with it the requirement to install some recreational area?
When this application originally came forward, it was as a multi-family, it wasn't a mobile home park.
It wasn't a mobile home park.
That's not what the ordinance had at the time.
Okay.
So obviously it's changed now. I don't know if we can require that as a condition or not.
If it's not an existing condition, if it's not an existing requirement, no.
Okay. Just wanted to not leave that one hanging out there for unanswered.
So to the best of your knowledge, there is no solid definition as to how many school children can be housed in this area? it to be somewhat wide open.
Well,
We don't restrict.
well, if the age requirement stayed in, then.
Yes, that's, yes.
Okay, so for the moment, if, I'm going to open it up to the audience, but if perhaps, Mr. Best, you could sit back there again so we could see better,
Yep.
at least I could see better, that I would appreciate it. And then, so, for those who would like to make comments, I'd ask you to stand and identify yourself and,
My name's Dwayne Mackey, Lot
wait,
47.
excuse me, wait a minute. After I call on you, please try to get my attention and let me call on you, and then you can stand and speak and try to address the board, as opposed to an individual. We're not here to get into any cross-audience discussions. So, if you'd like, you can go ahead first, please.
Dwayne Mackey, Lot 47. We really have a problem if Fred changes his age requirements, but he should be obligated as far as the other rules and regulations. As pet friendly. Well, you got 2 yards of feces, you got tiptoe through the yards. And vinyl skirting, I was demanded that vinyl skirting. No vinyl skirting on 5 or 6 other trails there. That's really my main complaint with Fred. All in all, Fred's been all right, but I have no discrimination towards the age requirement, really. Just if you change one rule, follow his other rules.
Do we have a
Okay.
copy of the rules?
And it
I
says
do not.
like the 55 and older. It goes on to say no one 18 years of age, under 18 years of age, bring that to your attention. Except for that, I could go on and on, but I won't let it sit there. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Let me just note, that is a good question about the copy of rules. Hold on. Okay, anyone else? Please.
My name is Charles Campbell. I'm an abutter, and I have a little concern with Mr. Best, with some of his comments, in that when this went before the board, it was stressed by the board and by Mr. Best that this was going to be an elderly park. And in fact, Fred assured me many times that it was gonna stay elderly, and one of the questions I asked him was, what happens when you can't fill it with elderly? And he assured me there was plenty of demand and that wasn't going to be a problem. And obviously, we see now it is. And some of the concern that I have is the way Fred operates his park. There's the buffer area between my property and his was supposed to be maintained as a wooded buffer. And tenants have gone in and cleared out brush, they've cleared out trees, up bushes, they've cleared out areas and put gravel in to make parking areas. There's areas where they store boats and they have a barbecue pit. And Fred had told me one time that, you know, he didn't want to plant stuff there because it wouldn't grow. Well, stuff's not going to grow if they continue to use this buffer in this area. And I question whether he even tells his tenants that that buffer is supposed to stay as a buffer and that they can't use it. So my request is, if this is going to move forward, that we have a stockade fence basically on the property line, and then he can do whatever he wants to in his buffer area, and it won't affect me. At the moment, I have provided the code office with photographs where stuff comes over onto my property. There's stuff, garbage flowing over the stone wall onto my property. I've had to deal with tenants from the park on my property, and when we inform them that it's private property, I get called everything but a white man. And my concern is that if this becomes a park that's not just for elderly, that I'm gonna have more of this continue, because they want to use my property as their recreation area. I come home one day and I found kids back in my barn with my horses. You know, I'm just concerned that, again, if this is allowed to grow with this, I'm gonna have more of an issue with this.
Mr. Campbell, thank you
Sure.
for coming and sharing your comments. Is this just, first of all, what's the status of that spot that you're talking about now? And is this kind of a widespread thing, or is it just singular, is it kind of just in that area that you were just talking about?
Can you, you want to explain it on the site map
Yeah.
a little bit?
It's awful getting old, you know?
Face the alternative.
This is my property right here, and
Right.
basically, the park abuts my property from this point to this point. And
Right.
it's along here where I have the issue.
Okay.
Right. And Fred did agree to plant some trees in here, which have, he didn't think they would grow, they've grown nicely. But the folks in this trailer right here are using this as a storage area. The previous people who lived here basically cleared a couple areas here and made parking areas. They put gravel in there. And I believe my wife called Mr. Bass one time, and his comment was that his tenants and he doesn't have any control over them. The people that live in this trailer here right now have cleared out a pretty good area right here. And, you
So
know,
where are you saying, behind the trailer? or-
yes, yes.
Okay, I wasn't even aware of this, so I didn't even know that.
So where are we? You're on 220, right?
235,
235. Where's 235?
right here.
Okay, so you drive into this road.
No, this is my driveway right
That's
here.
your driveway.
Yes.
But to get to Fred's, you go in this road. So these are private homes.
Yes,
So to put a fence up from there to there, how many hundreds of feet are we talking about? For instance, just to give me an idea of the scale here.
400, 500 feet? Isn't that about what it is?
I guess so, maybe quite a bit.
And what are these three red things? Is that the
That's what the
septic?
septic system is.
Okay.
Okay.
Do you want comments from me right now to rebuff him here, or?
Not yet.
Okay.
I think, thank you for
Okay, 'cause-
offering before just jumping in. Okay. Anything else you wanted to add?
The only thing that I'll add to that again is, basically following on more of this gentleman's comments, is the landscaping that was required for the mobile home park. He had brought in, I think it was, if you read in the minutes, he brought in 6 examples of how the lots would be landscaped after trailers went in that were to be done by the owner. And I hazard to guess whether any of those lots are actually landscaped.
Thank you.
Max, I have a question for you. For Mr. Campbell, would the town have any remedy for him if he found his land being used not, that he knows about? What, is there a remedy for that?
Would be code enforcement, and I believe in the memo that I think the memo and even one of the documents I provided
Yeah.
was about series of violations, and the 50-foot buffer is included in that.
So you call the code enforcement officer, he or she comes out, says this is not code, and then what happens?
Ben, do you want to cover that?
You can understand what's code officer. If it needs to be something in the buffer or on Chuck's land,
Yeah.
I can't do anything, it's a civil issue.
That's a civil issue.
Yep. It has to be between the two of them, and I get talking to attorneys, and if they can't get it straightened out, then it goes to court. I can't do anything about that. It's just I don't have the authority to.
Okay.
Is a 50-foot buffer standard for a
That was-
subdivision like this?
That was required at the time.
All right. Anybody else?
I'll speak. My name's Ann Estabrook. My property butts just as you go into Lady Slipper Lane. I bought my house in 2002. I was promised by Mr. Best that the mobile home park would be for 55 and older. Mr. Best also promised that the park would be picturesque and well-maintained. When Mr. Best started to move the younger people into the mobile home park, I questioned him, he told me that it would be 2.5% under the age of 55 there. I have called the authorities numerous times, squealing tires, hearing gunshots, kids being picked up at the end of Lady Slipper Lane from school on a four-wheeler, no helmet, not to mention the cars that park at the end of Lady Slipper Lane at 3 and 4 o'clock in the morning, and they're one space in and one space out, and I'm sure they're not talking about the Patriots game. I have found hypodermic needles at the end of Lady Slipper Lane. I have found numerous nip bottles in my driveway, beer cans. A relative of mine has stayed with my husband and I this summer, and we have a campsite that we go to, and she stated to me that, you know, how do you live where you live? And I said, what do you mean? She said, I would never be able to visit you there. I said, you're always welcome there. And she said, I can't go up there anymore. She said, my dealers are up there, and she's in recovery. You know, I am a case manager for major mental health issues. I have a lot of clients in the Belfast area. And I will say housing is very hard to find from, I'm gonna say Bangor, all over the state of Maine. However, you know, I had a couple of 55 and older clients, and I was gonna refer them down, but they said to me, the one mobile home park I will not go to is in Waldoboro, Maine, because it's known as the drug mobile home. And I played dumb, and I said, well, what mobile home park is that? And they said, well, it's Lady Slipper Lane, East Ridge, and I was like, oh, okay. But being in, Mr. Best has not been following code regulations. I volunteered for CHIP one, fall with a client of mine, and I was told that we couldn't go up to Lady Slipper Lane because the pad was not up to code, and they couldn't help winterize. And CHIP is a huge agency that helps a lot of people with a lot of needs. You know, people that are 55 can do and break laws as well as somebody that's 20. However, I'm starting to feel not safe in my own home. People, again, I've called the authorities, I don't know how many times. There's elderly people on my road. I'm scared for them. And I feel that when I first moved in, there were no problems. You know, you'd hear people squeal off Route 1, but there weren't the problems that there are now. So I'm just here to say that I'm appalled at the way this was. I rented from Mr. Best. I had to sign a lease agreement. I had references checked. You know, maybe you should start following those rules. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes.
I got one, and thank you, Ms. Estabrook, for coming and sharing that.
Okay.
But I'm just wondering, I find this troubling, this letter.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't even feel safe where you live, I mean, that's something stressful.
Mm-hmm.
I'm assuming you're not alone in that? I mean, as far as people, is that the feedback you're getting, or?
It's my personal feeling.
Yes.
You know, my kids still with me because they can't afford housing, so when they said something about the cellar, my husband kind of laughed.
Right.
But, you know, I don't know if I'd want them. I never locked my door at night until like 5 years ago when I started hearing stuff up and down that road.
Right.
And, you know, my dogs, if they're up at 3 o'clock in the morning, they don't go back down. Nobody sleeps in my house because they're barking. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other? Oh, no, go ahead.
Hi, can I go ahead?
Yes, please, I got you.
Hi, my name is Judith Hunt, and my husband and I live on the corner of Lady Slipper Lane and 235 Union Road. We moved there a few years ago, we purchased our home, fell in love with the house, wanted to be there, didn't even realize what was up the street. My aunt lives across the street, we have family all around us. We moved in and started doing work on our house and clearing the land and making it look good and doing those kinds of things. I continually pick up nip bottles. My daughter happened to be at my house one morning, and there was young kids waiting for the school bus, and they came up to her, because she was getting in her car and going to work. They came up to her concerned because there was a bag of food from a food pantry with needles, used needles in it, and they did not know what to do. They were waiting for the bus. My daughter is an adult and she's a case manager, so she took care of that so that the children wouldn't be in harm's way of that. It's constant. Our road isn't known as Lady Slipper Lane, it's known as Heroin Highway. It is constant traffic up and down and up and down. We've installed security cameras at our house that are motion detected because I am fearful of the people that are coming up and down. Not all of the people that live in that mobile home are bad people. However, I would like to know exactly how Mr. Best is coming up with the 80-20 in his range of age. If he doesn't even know their ages, he's guessing by what they look like. If you spent time in, I know that the town has numerous complaints and also there's multiple code issues up there. There's still campers up there, people living in campers, not even mobile homes, they're not even supposed to be up there. And I know the town has been working on some of the code issues, and I do believe there's also code issues as far as the septic and that thing to be taken care of also. I'm very concerned for that. I live downhill from that, and if you're gonna increase and have even more people up there in an area that's not being taken care of, I mean, I would love to see it at 55 and older park and have it nicely maintained. I think it would be a nice thing to have. I just think it's very unfortunate the way it is and the way it's being maintained and how Mr. Best is taking care of his tenants. I think we all understanding housing. I have a young daughter who rents, and you know, if that was a nice place, I'd say, yeah, go for it, but it's not. And I think Mr. Best is actually doing his tenants a disservice, and it needs to be taken care of, and I don't think adding more people to the problem is going to take care of the issue.
Thank you. Sir?
My name's Peter Lee, and I live in lot 46, and I feel the same way that lady does there about the traffic. I'm 63 years old. I've had my dolly tires sliced for no reason at all. I don't bother anybody. For some reason, my old tank's got water in it, and it's nonstop, and it's just getting out of hand. And you got to get rid of the riffraff. That's all there's to it.
Okay, thank you.
What was his name again?
Peter Lee.
Any other comments? Yes, please.
My name is Patricia Key, and I live directly across from the trailer park driveway. And almost every night, there is cars going in and out all night long. Squealing tires, light shining in my bedroom windows. The place looks like a ghetto back there. Fred did not do anything that he was supposed to do back there, like landscaping it. And it's a mess. That's it.
Thank you.
Can I ask one more question?
You may.
Thank you.
Yes, of course.
We have an officer here tonight, and I'd just like to ask you if you know the number of calls you've had up there in the last month.
I do.
Hold on a minute. Go ahead.
So I'm Chief Lash. I was called earlier this week and asked to bring some numbers. So I kind of broke it down in years. So from January of 2016 to the end of 2017, we had 38 calls in the park. From January of 2018 to the, December 30th of last year, 2019, we had 227 calls in the park. Wow.
Chief, could I ask you a question, please?
Yes, sir.
And first of all, I want to commend you on your leadership in the town.
Thank you.
When you get these calls, that's a huge jump. Are these calls mainly drug-related? Is it thievery? Is it malicious? What would you say the
Some
break?
of our biggest numbers are assaults,
domestic violence. So we have a number here we call police information.
Yes.
That's when we're getting the complaints, and we just categorize it as police information. That's a lot of drug information. That's a big one. Unwanted subjects, a lot of warrant arrests out of there. Those are the big ones.
Are we talking about the same people over and over again?
I found that there's a lot of different people, and so a lot of the domestic disturbances are the same people.
Yeah.
However, a lot of these other things are people who are in and out of the park. You know, a lot of the assaults and the threatenings and those types of problems are people coming in and out of the park.
Does it relate to more like one household, certain number of households?
It's all over the park.
Really?
There's probably 5 to 6 specific locations.
And I assume the town's police force it's part of their regular route? Like daily, many times a day kind of thing?
Yeah, we're through the park quite often.
What was the numbers for the first year you said?
So the first, so I did from January of 2016. Yep, to the end of 2017 was 38. And then from the first of January of 2018 to the end of this just past year was 227.
227.
Chief, that's just an enormous jump, and I'm wondering, what are the demographic, what are your thoughts? How could it just go from, I mean, did you police it better? Were there more of an influx of people who had a criminal?
I think we started getting more calls up there. So a lot of this stuff is probably, once we became more aware of what was going on, more calls started happening up there because we were up there more.
Well, glad you're up there.
Yeah. But, and another problem is we're spending a lot of time up there when there's other needs. So
Yep, okay.
That's another concern.
Yeah, good point.
So,
Yeah,
yeah, let's do that, then I got a
Okay.
question I'd like to
Katie
ask.
Winterberg, resident. I would like to ask Mr. Best, how many sites are on your land?
40.
And how many sites have mobile homes on them?
I think 25 maybe right now.
And how many campers are on the land?
3.
I heard there was a lot more than that. And I heard
Well,
there
there's
was a-
one that's, it's not being used as a camper. The people had a camper there, and they just bought a brand-new mobile home.
Town planner, what is the status of the application? Is it a mobile home park or is it a campground?
A mobile home park. It's
Why
approved
do
as
we
an
have
adult.
campers on this property and people living in them? That's my question.
I heard it costs the town too much to house these people in the campus to move them somewhere else.
That's not the issue here. The issue here
Issue
is
to the town.
the application says mobile home park, but yet there are campers on this lot.
And I'll also point out that that's also against the state laws.
Well, I would think that alone would shut them down. Shut them down. Shut them down and get them out of there. That's my comment.
okay, thank you. Jim, then I have a comment myself.
So that actually leads me to 2 comments. First one would be, Chief Bush, whose responsibility is it to move the campers out if it is in violation of law?
It is.
Not to put you on the spot, but
Right, yeah, I mean, I've got no teeth in it. I mean, there's nothing I can do about it. I can't go force somebody. That's a civil issue. That's a town. The town's gotta figure out what they gotta do. I can't kick somebody off their land unless a court order comes to me and says, go remove these people. I cannot do it.
So it comes to the owner of the park to say, I don't want you here, it's in violation. And if they won't move, he's got to go to court and hire
And then I have
lawyers.
to have a court order that says these people have to go.
Okay, just understanding the process. The other point, just listening to all the input, is that it seems like we've got 2 separate issues. We've got the 55, or not 55, if you will, and then we've got a number of issues regarding the overall administration of the park
Correct.
and the neighborhood, and they're really separate.
Exactly.
Or are they?
Well-
Or are they?
well, that
If the
was-
55 changes, will
Sure.
that change the complexion and the management of the park?
Even if it was 100% 55 and over, what would change?
Well, that's really the issue. I think we do have to make it clear, I think, to the audience, that the planning board is not an enforcement arm of the town or the state. We don't have enforcement responsibility, and we can't impose our will in that way. However, there are, our jurisdiction is, do the applications that come before us meet the town land use ordinance? And there are many cases where, in this case, the original application, there were a lot of contingencies. And there are a lot of things that are part of the application that, when it gets approved, those things have to happen, or it doesn't, then there's enforcement issues that the town has, the code enforcement officer and other ways to make sure that the applicants are meeting their requirements. So, that said, the issues, or many of the issues and concerns that we've heard are serious, and none of us are taking those lightly. That said, a lot of these issues aren't necessarily specific to this request, and so it's somewhat complicated. So I will, anything else from the board, and then I have Mr. Butler has his arm up, and then Mr. Bess, I'll let you respond.
Mr. Chairman, my sensibilities tell me that the board, he wants to change the age requirement. So my thinking is if you get rid of that, there's more younger people there, that is going to increase what we're hearing. I mean, I don't know that, but I'm saying, that would that be fair?
There is a correlation between who is committing these crimes and being under the age of 55.
Okay, okay.
However,
yeah.
if he was able to make the property more saleable and it was under new management,
Right.
maybe a lot of these issues would go along.
Right.
Would get corrected.
And I don't think we can, I don't want to be age discriminating in terms of profiling as well. And so
Yeah.
it's not our,
Right.
I don't want to characterize an age group as being the issue here. That, apart from the data that might
Is
demonstrate
driving.
otherwise.
Yeah.
Mr. Butler,
I have two questions.
could you stand up? I
Sure,
hear you
sorry.
better.
I have two questions to address to the chair. One is, there are apparently house rules that pertain to the mobile home park.
Mhm.
Are among those house rules a rule against any drugs on the park? And if there are drugs, what are the consequences? That's the first question. And the second one is, as far as this board is concerned, is there not an implied requirement that if you're going to approve a change for somebody, that they must be in compliance with the preconditions you set for that property? I would think that would be a requirement that governs your actions.
Yeah.
Good point.
Yeah, I think that's perfectly fair. I think the issue here and is the compliance rules that originally governed, that we have to wrestle with how we integrate that. Go ahead.
Stan, so this issue of having an improper boundary, the 50-foot buffer thing not being, enforced or kept to, did I understand you correctly that that's only a civil matter at this point? There's nothing that you can do as an inspector for the town?
No, what takes place on somebody else's property is a civil issue. I can't do anything about it. I have no authority to do something about it. It's not in a statute or ordinance that I can enforce. So,
If we
somebody
put-
has an issue with Trailer Park or Fred Best, they would have to go to, like Chuck would have to go take him to court over it if he wouldn't straighten it out.
That would be sort of relative to, the civil issue relative to trash. If we ask it a different way, which is, there was originally part of the plan a buffer zone that was approved. And if the buffer zone that's currently in place doesn't meet the requirements of the original application that was approved, would that then be
Yes,
an issue for you?
correct.
Okay.
So, if, I didn't really know about, until just recently when this was coming to the board, about the gravel lots that have been put on the neighbor's land. So,
Okay.
we can make, we'll ask Mr. Best to take it out of there, but he's just, I guess before he's said that it's, you know, the renters put it there, it's up to them to take it out. We can certainly send him a letter and tell him it has to be out of there in a certain amount of time.
Mm-hmm.
Because now the ground is frozen, I don't know how that's gonna work, but.
Okay.
But there's other issues up there, the septic for one. I would say that if it does go forward, and you take the 55 off, that septic system should be re-engineered for the 40 lots. You don't know how many bedrooms are gonna be in the mobile homes that are gonna be moved in. 55 and over, usually it's just gonna be a couple using one bedroom. Septic system is designed on bedrooms. It can go on water use, but he has to keep a water meter, which I believe he has. But that should certainly be looked at. And then a buffer, I would say, you know, to the board, I would say I would have him put up a fence and do some plantings, because the fence is not gonna last forever. But at least it would last long enough for those trees to mature enough that it would create another buffer, a vegetated buffer.
Am I correct in that in order for the land to be sold, the septic system has to be redone in any case?
No,
Or
I
can
didn't
it
say
be
that be
redesigned?
redone, I would say you would need it to be re-engineered. So the engineer to look at it. If you're talking 40 lots at one bedroom,
Okay,
you're talking, you know, a lot smaller
20 at
septic
2.
system than what's there.
okay.
Go ahead.
Just to follow through with what Stan said, that was why I asked, were there any design differences? And so this is an important one. So as Stan stated, there would have to be some documentation of the status of the existing subsurface system and that it wouldn't handle an estimated additional bedrooms because the park was changed from 55 plus to just open status where, as Stan said, there would be an estimation there would be more bedrooms, more people. So that is an important.
Yeah, I guess it's reasonable to assume younger people would be more people, but there isn't anything in this that I recall that describes the number
When you
of...
design engineered systems, you know, we don't know what the basis was for that design. Was it just pure bedroom?
Yeah, we do.
It was
42 bedrooms. 42 bedroom
All
units.
right.
Yep.
All right, in that case, then that's a relevant question to see if we're gonna be adding more 3-bedroom mobile homes, things like that, to accommodate families.
But there are problems now with the septic system? Is that what I'm hearing?
I'm not aware of Stan.
I'll pull up. This was back in June when Stan was on leave for some time. William Butler, who was the code enforcement officer in Rockland, helped out here in Waldeboro, and he did a quick site evaluation of the mobile home park. I think I gave you a letter about this. And there were 2 problems regarding septic that he pointed out. One was this west septic system. He says the lower engineering septic field near the park entrance has water impoundment at the field toe, east side of the field. The water requires testing for confirming it is not septage, and the field requires periodic mowing. Additional decisions by the town may be necessary contingent on the results of the testing. And then the second one he has is for the east septic system. The surface of the field has evidence of settling on the easterly half and is poorly vegetated. The cover needs evaluation by a main licensed site evaluator and implementing recommendations based on the recommendations. In addition, the permit required nitrate testing within the nitrate easement area. Please provide test results. And I believe if you were to look at the map you have now, that nitrate is, yep, that red area. And that's what I was referring to earlier, where I believe there was no nitrate testing required at the time, but I think that might have been because of the age of it being, assuming it would be only 1 to 2 bedrooms at most. Okay.
I'd like to hear Fred explain how he intends to upgrade the quality of the people that are living there and attempt to eliminate some of their difficulties.
Does the board want me to address this?
Yeah,
or-
and yes, just a second. Before we do that, Ted, I just want to make sure so that if there's anything else that anybody else wants to say, that in case it's something different that we haven't heard, so Mr. Best can address those all at once, so we don't have to go back and forth.
Could you tell me if the nitrate testing has been done? As it was sent out back in June, and I think he was supposed to comply within, has he complied with any of those?
Oh, with the document that was provided? Or the document done by Bill Butler?
The document done by Bill Butler? Because that was sent to him and he was supposed to comply, correct?
Correct. Fred was given this on June 21st, 2019, if I recall. And Fred went to all the individual mobile homes that had violations regarding building codes, violations, either decks, side steps, and so on. Fred went to each of them and says that I think only 1 or 2 people would actually do anything. There is the campers, those are still there, including the one on lot 1 where, yes, the person is moving in, but it's still on site. The 12-foot mobile home, that's staying there. But in terms of everything else, I don't believe Bill Butler has been there to confirm any changes. But Fred has claimed that the ones that are non-mobile home related, he has done.
So the nitrate testing, was that done and supplied to the town?
Fred claims that that was something required early, but was then removed in the later application.
We don't know the
Okay.
answer to that question because why?
I'd have to pull
Wouldn't Bill Butler have communicated with you? Or
about coming to
why
see
was it-
everything.
Why was it removed?
No, the nitrate testing, Fred came here and told me that he doesn't have to do the nitrate testing because that was removed early on in the original application.
Oh,
And I'm trying to.
I know what you're, I
This
think I know what that,
was allowed to go onto neighboring property, I think.
Yes,
well,
because an easement
yeah,
was
I
made.
think,
Yep.
right, let's,
Yeah,
Chuck, can you talk about the easement for a minute?
I'm just curious where in any of the minutes that it states that that requirement that the testing went away.
It's on the 2001 minutes we're talking about.
Right. Now I have to find it in those minutes.
Yep. But
But
I
it
don't know,
was
but there
there.
are 2 locations. The one closer to the main road was
Yes.
another site, so would that have been,
Oh, this was specifically for the red one.
they're both reddish, they're both red.
The one in the northerly lot that goes onto Chuck's
I
property.
have to find it.
That's this one.
Yep.
I'm trying to find the letter from the state. No, this is Warner.
I agree with you, Barbara, that it was in there,
Yep.
that testing requirement was waived based on a waiver.
I don't know if the
Can I
testing
address
was.
the board while you're going through all the
In
paperwork?
1 minute, you may. Okay, I'm gonna have to look for that. Okay, please.
All right, there's been a lot brought up here, and we've kind of gotten off my original request. but I'm gonna try to hit some of the high points. A lot of what the people have said here is 100% true. We pick up garbage along this lane every week in the summertime. Beer cans, trash, empty bottles. I haven't picked up any needles, but other people have told me they found them. I'm gonna back up a little. 7 years ago, my wife was diagnosed with dementia, and I was her caregiver for 2 years, and she's been dead about 5 years. And I have been working my way back to be a better landlord in the last couple of years. I evicted some people this summer. I could evict more people if they were convicted of drug use, not drug use, but stealing drugs or what have you. It's in my ordinance, in my rules. It's in state law. If they're becoming a nuisance, you can evict them. But people saying so-and-so's a drug dealer and so-and-so's a drug dealer, I can go to court and spend every cent I have, and the judges are not gonna evict them out of the trailer park without proof, without convictions. And the police have, their hands are tied too. That's the problem. Things have changed in America in the last few years, and you watch the nightly news every night, things have changed in Maine in every town. And I grew up in Skowhegan, and they just had a shootout up in Canaan at a gas station. 2 cruisers were shot up by some wild man, and the assailant had 6 shots in him. Okay, I'm gonna get off that. The individual lots, we put lawns in, we did some landscaping. I have people driving on their lawns when they won't drive in their driveway. You know, it's just, it's frustrating to do this work and then redo it again. I will say, this has been the most frustrating thing I've done in my life is own this trailer park. And I will say, I remember in high school that the principals used to say 5% caused most of the problems. I would say in my trailer park it's 10 or 15%. The rest of the people are hardworking, they have families, they have kids, they go to work, they don't bother anybody. The worst time of the year is in the summer when it's hot and people are closer and they're outdoors. This is the way it is, it seems to be. On this business about the nitrates, Mr. Chucky here, I gave him that land for that easement, and that was the understanding from the geologist that there would be nitrates over there, and this is why I gave him this land. I traded land with him for this easement, and if they had wanted to do testings, we would have had location of testing wells. I'm on the sewer board, and we test all the leach areas where we spray every year by the DEP. And this was not a requirement, and it was not on the plan. And, you know, it wouldn't have been a big thing. To address the town, these puddles that they found near the leach field were after the severe rains we had in June. I had water standing in my own driveway for a month, and that water disappeared in July and August. There's nothing failing of the leach fields. So this is my response to most of what we're talking about. Times have changed in the last 5 years. That's about the best way. And it is difficult to evict someone. I have one tenant, I won't say his name. I'm waiting for him to go to court. He assaulted one of his neighbors. I get a conviction, I can take him to court and he can be evicted. And it will kill 2 birds with 1 stone because the town does not want these campers. Other than that, I have no way of getting them out of the park because the town gave them the permits to enter the park. And that's where some of these camper problems started. But these are down to 1, 2, 3, and I own one of the 3rd camper, and the tenant that was just there has moved out, and in the spring that camper will be hauled out. So that's maybe didn't hit all the notes, but it's hard to police people because it's not my job. It's hard.
Okay, thank you. Please.
Back to Mr. Bass saying that the town gave them the right to move a camper in. I would like to ask, isn't there something within his own rules of the park about a camper? And I'm pretty sure the town wouldn't give anybody the right to move a camper in to a mobile home park. That's not how campers work, and that's not how the town works. And furthermore, it sounds like he doesn't have a clue about the ages right now up there. I mean, I don't even believe that it's 80-20 up there right now. And, you know, I'd like to see, I don't believe it's illegal to ask them the age to move into a mobile home park where there is an age requirement to move in. I don't believe that's illegal, that's part of the requirement of the park itself.
Thank you. So, Mr. Best, the rules that you've talked about, so you don't sign a lease with your renters.
Right.
But they're required to sign that they're gonna conform with these rules.
No, they don't even.
They don't.
We tell them that there are rules and they can be evicted if, you know, if they're not behaving. I guess that's about the best way. The easiest one that I have is about dogs running loose, and I have recently threatened to throw some people out, and they had their dogs on a run, and then they stopped doing it. It's like, I get one problem taken care of, it's like a tag team match with wrestlers. You get one thing taken care of, and the next day, it's something new with people causing chaos. That's about the best way of putting it.
I understand that. I guess what I'm struggling with is that you have, that there are state requirements, all kinds of issues with evicting somebody, but there's no lease, and they're not required to sign a set of rules that they're going to obey them. There's a catch-22 here. If there's nothing that the tenant has to sign that says that they're going to obey the rules, and then on the other hand, you're saying you can't kick somebody out for disobeying the rules, those two things don't match up very well.
I think in state law, there's something there. I didn't bring the state laws down here to talk about evictions. I believe there's something in state law. If they're breaking park rules along with a bunch of other state rules, and right at the top of my head, the person I just evicted were evicted for a nuisance. And we had numerous complaints. This couple would call, they take turns calling the police constantly for fighting with each other and this and that. And then I have one other gentleman in the park. He's kind of he's disabled, and he calls the police and the ambulance a lot. And I don't know what you can do about somebody like that. They get a call, they have to respond. And he's had seizures, he's had other problems. And again, we've gotten away from, you know, what my request was about, but there's all these things going on, and I can't be there 24 hours a day chasing people littering. The one last thing I would say is, I bought some cameras, and I'm going to put these in by my shop, and I have trouble with trash there. This is, you know, I haul the trash for the tenants, and they bring down furniture and whatever, and that's not in what I agreed to do. And then I ask people, well, who did this? Oh, we won't tell you. So I'm left lugging off and paying to remove their furniture. So it's frustrating. I guess that's about the best way.
All right, thank you. Stan?
Yeah, I'd like to speak to the camper issue.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Best came to me during the summer and said that so-and-so needs a place to stay. They'd like to move a camper in. In the ordinance, you can have a camper for 120 days, and I told him that. They can only stay in the summer, they have to be out by October. He agreed to that, the people that came in agreed to that. My mistake was only it's on one permit, not on the other one, in writing. But he certainly knew when they went in that they had only could be there for a maximum 120 days, or October 1st, whichever date came first.
Okay.
And they just stayed there.
Okay, thank you.
If he has a problem getting out, he should just give them 30 days and tell them to get out.
Okay. So I'd like to, if there isn't anything else pressing from the audience, I'd like to have a board discussion here. I guess, to try to get everybody's feeling on where we should go with this. I think I'm sympathetic to all of the issues, including the issues that, the challenges that Mr. Bess has with running a mobile home park. But we do also, I'll get, I think there is also a responsibility we have, as in any, to the tenor and quality of the neighborhood surrounding any of the things that we deal with in terms of approving applications. So, Max, did you have something you wanted to say?
I wasn't here for the end of what Stan was talking about with those travel trailers, but I will note that March 15th, 2017, when, before I think he was here as well, there was a notice sent to Fred stating that travel trailers are not allowed to be there year-round. I just wanted to add on to that with Stan, just because he did mention there was no language in the building permit, but there was prior knowledge that they are not supposed to be there year-round.
Okay. So, to go back to something that you said before, Jim, we've got, there's a couple of very, very different issues here. Because the specific request to change the 55 and over, which was the original stipulation, there's that issue. There's, then there's a number of issues that are civil and legal that are not directly related to the 55 and over. However, there are also a number of compliance issues that appear to be existing and in the process of running issues that are trying to be, the town's trying to address.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
And again, this is multifaceted and multifactorial for sure, but I just don't want us to lose sight of those law-abiding citizens who live in there and are abiding it. I don't want to, I hope I get all the facts, so I don't want to, we should be thinking about them too. And I just hope that, we get all the facts to make a good decision. Because if there's 10% of the people that are the recidivisms, what about all the good people, quote unquote, who aren't breaking the law? So I just hope we don't lose sight of that piece.
Well, I think, I don't know, I guess the place where I would put that is in the bucket of the neighborhood and how they feel about it. I think that's
Right,
really
okay.
where that belongs, because that's in our purview. And issues with compliance with the original application as it was accepted by the board. Is that fair, Bill?
That's correct, yeah.
Any other comments or questions, Sarah? You look like you're gonna...
It seems to me like the request to change the age requirement is really irrelevant, because one, Mr. Best doesn't really know how old the people are, and if he goes back to opening it up to any age group, then that seems to lead itself to some more problems. I'm wondering if a list can be made of all the compliance issues, and once he fixes the compliance issues, then we can go back in and look at the age issue.
Sorry, I just want to jump in. You want to know if there's a list of compliance issues?
Or we could make a list of compliance issues.
That
That's
was,
this
I
letter.
referenced that earlier. That was what Bill Butler did back in the
Oh,
summer.
okay. So we could revisit that, but maybe there are more compliance issues that we should add to it.
So my thoughts run along the same lines, but a little bit differently. That's that, and Barbara, picking up what you said earlier, where maybe the best thing to do is to agree to changing the 55 and older in hopes of it being bought, and perhaps new management will have an improvement on the management style.
But that's,
Just to finish, I'm thinking that what we can do instead is frankly not approve the change. Be willing to entertain it from a prospective buyer.
Pardon?
Be willing to entertain that from a prospective buyer. If you find a buyer that says, I'll buy it if we can change the age restriction, bring them in, and we can listen to it then. And the way the board would listen to that request would be a direct reflection of how well these other issues have been dealt with in the intervening time. So if the trailer park is the same 2 years from now when you find a buyer as it is now.
I'll just tell you, the trailer park will always be in flux. I don't think, it's just, the more you deal with people, the more you begin to realize America has changed. And I'm not saying for the better or the worse, and I'm not saying it's about the ages. I don't think the 55 number is gonna change bad apples, young bad apples, old bad apples. I think they're gonna cause problems. And my problem as a landlord is if I can evict them under state law, I will evict them. And I'm gonna keep doing that anyways. It's a struggle, but I'm gonna keep doing it because I don't want the aggravation. I don't need the aggravation.
So if you keep doing that and improve the climate
Well,
of
that's
the
my plan
park.
right now anyways, is to keep weeding out the bad apple. But-
And all your neighbors agree that you've done that when we have another.
Well, they aren't all gone yet, but the problem is tenants have more rights than you and I do, and a lot of people would agree. If you're a landlord and you even have an apartment, you have to have a lot of reasons to get people out of an apartment.
Sure, but along these lines, though, I guess personally, not as chairman, just my personal board member opinion
Yeah.
on this, which relates to, I think, your suggestion and a couple of things that we've talked about, is I have a hard time approving the change of 55 or older when you can't provide a list of what the ages of your tenants are, and you don't have we haven't seen a copy of the rules, and you don't, but you don't require your tenants to sign a copy of the rules to give you any recourse.
When I give them an application to move in,
Yeah.
it says, I have seen the rules or been given a copy of
Okay.
the rules, and they sign that on their application. So
Does
that
the
becomes
application
part of
say
their
that
application.
well, that they've seen it and read it, do they agree to it? Is that part of your application?
Well, you tell someone this is the park rules, this is the pet rules, I think we're splitting hairs here if you know, and again, this is backed up with state law, talking about park rules. So if I want to take them into court because their dog is running loose all the time and they won't do it, and I'll call the officer to come and haul their dogs away a few times. We haven't come to that, but there's, you know, it may happen with some people, you know. I certainly don't want somebody's pit bull running loose biting people, you know. So again, that's a nuisance, that's covered under state law. I go to court, I can evict them for that. It's complicated, but it is what it is. It's just the way things have evolved. And it's really frustrating to go to court and have a tenant there with Pine Tree Legal. They don't have even any money involved in this, and it's like, oh, we're gonna just throw this out and come back again, pay another $160, and we're gonna go through this, jump through the hoop again. It's frustrating. Same way with these campers. There's nothing in state law that says these campers have to be out of the trailer park.
Right,
I
but
can't
it doesn't have to
Can be
be.
unoccupied.
Right, and it doesn't even, if
This
there's
is
a
a
town.
point that's in
there's
dispute
a
between the town
Well,
and
but
I.
there's a town land use ordinance as well. It doesn't necessarily have to be a state regulation.
My hearing isn't real good.
It doesn't have to be a state regulation if it's in the town land use ordinance. It doesn't have to be state.
Just one more.
Yes, please.
How bad is this septic system up there?
Well, we don't have any indication that it's bad.
Yeah. And
It's
if,
not
and if
presented.
that Mr. Butler, what was his name?
William Butler, not
William
related
Butler
to
went
that one
through
over
in
there.
June, I think everybody had standing water on top, I mean,
Well,
that,
is there sewerage above the wall, above the, on
And there's no
top of the
evidence.
ground?
Well, and again, that's also a separate, it's a separate issue from the
No,
issue at hand.
it's a health issue.
It is a health issue.
And that should trump anything that we've discussed here tonight. It's a health issue. That should trump anything
well,
that
we
we've
don't know,
said.
we don't know what, if that's the case.
Right, we don't know that
That's
that's
the
the
issue.
case, and again, that
Well, let's get
that doesn't,
somebody over there and take,
absolutely, but that's not for the planning, that's a code enforcement issue.
Okay,
And it's
all right.
not a planning board issue.
getting back to you, I would think it would be in your best interest to get a hold of a lawyer and sit down with make out rules and regulations for this park and have it notarized, have it legally brought up so that when you want to take someone to court, you have these papers in tow.
Well-
And all the judge has to see is this, and he'll say, okay.
And
How easy is that?
can I?
Yes, you may.
So, being a case manager, one of my duties is to go to court with tenants.
Yes.
More tenants that I've seen been evicted. Pine Tree Legal may be there, but that doesn't really help them. I've had 5 evicted from a trailer park for not paying rent, for not following the rules in Belfast. I've had 3 evicted from Realty Resources for breaking the rules, and those rules are stated out fact. When people sign leases, they have references to check. So if you rent something to somebody, a lot or something, to me is common sense. Like, I was a tenant once, my references were checked because they all called me. Guess who my landlord was? Mr. Best. So why in Lord's name didn't he check the references when they moved up there? Because a lot of those people couldn't get into any place else. Thank you.
Thank you. So any other thoughts from the board?
I'm not against the idea of making this change. I don't know if there's a big rush to do it. Seems like there's so many other issues kind of clouding the whole thing right now. I mean, this isn't,
Let me get closer so I can hear.
I'm wondering if there's in theory, I'm not against making this rule, this age change. What's the rush?
You know, there is, either way, the park will go forward, you know what I mean? I just felt, and as I put in my statement there, I just think it'll be easier for me in some ways. I've had more problems with older people, it seems, than younger people. The younger people are not the ones throwing the little nip bottles. I don't know about littering. The younger kids that are there are not the ones putting the furniture down by my trailer that I haul the trash every 2 weeks. That's about the best way to put it. The age hasn't really been a big problem. You know, them being the 20% that are under 55
I'd
hasn't
like
been
to
a
hear
problem.
from the rest of the board members. What is your thinking?
Seems to me like this situation is not unique at all in the state of Maine, and we really need some guidance as to what other communities have done to solve these problems. And with a little research, we should be able to come up with a workable set of regulations to clearly define how the landowner and the tenants and so on relate to each other comfortably, and a clear understanding of what the results should be. I think we probably need this absolutely clearly defined.
John, you got any comments?
I just like what Jim said earlier. I right now would not vote for the age, but maybe the new tenant coming in, we could get him or her here and say, this is what happened. Would you abide by these standards?
The new tenant, you mean the
I mean,
new
the
owner?
new buyer, I'm sorry, excuse me, as you were, the new buyer. And that seems to me, that would be, because you could tell the buyer, hey, you just got to go before the planning board. So I think that's kind of like a
Well,
nice
that's,
compromise.
you know, that's quite possible, you know?
Yeah.
This is, you know,
Yeah,
but I'm here because it was on the plan.
right.
In retrospect, if it had just been put in my rules, I wouldn't be asking anybody. I'd be changing the rules myself. But because this went on the plan, now it's in your purview.
Jim, do you have anything to add?
Just, I'm against it, and I urge Mr. Best to improve the management of the park. You know, however you can, agreeing it's a very difficult job.
Right.
Yes.
Sarah, just comments, because we're going to vote in a minute. I just want clarity for everybody. Do you have anything
Can I
you wanna-
pass and go after you? Because
You
I lost
may.
my train of thought.
Okay,
I had-
sorry,
I had
then I
what I was
talked.
gonna say.
and-
No, no,
and-
it's okay.
Well,
You want a quarter?
yeah. Yes. Yeah, I like Jim's suggestion is that if there is any activity with a potential sale or potential buyer, the board would be.
I have not tried to sell it at this
No,
point.
I know, but that the board would certainly be happy to address this again. And I think relative to what John, I think, was saying before, that in principle, I'm not against it, but I have a hard time with all of the issues of the neighbors that they have. And I know that that's an issue, that a challenge that you have in running a park like
Yeah.
that. I don't try to
Well,
diminish that, but the fact that there are a lot of questions and concerns that have been raised make it difficult to vote to change the dynamics
Yeah.
of the residencies. That's my summary.
The one thing that I would like to say is, there's probably 3 or 4 tenants here, and there's another over 20 that aren't here, and they're not complaining. I mean,
That, I
I
understand.
hope you understand that.
I understand that. I think a lot of the people here are abutters as opposed to residents
and I
of the park.
understand
But that's part of their right to be here and to
Oh, I
and to
agree
explain that.
100%.
And I think if this had been a situation where there were no concerns and questions, then it would have made our decision a lot easier. That's just a fact. Sarah, I'm sorry.
Yeah, what I was gonna say is, I think that, regarding the sale of the property is irrelevant, because we haven't been presented with any actual plan of yours to sell it, like a realtor's assessment or anything like that, so I wouldn't wanna base.
Nor would he have to, though.
No, I know, but what I'm saying is I
The-
wouldn't
the-
wanna base any decision or
Okay.
thought I made on whether or not you're gonna sell and what's gonna happen.
Right.
If you do sell.
The
I'm just
one thing you
saying I
need
don't
to
think-
understand is, if this had not been put on the plan, and I had put this in my park rules, someone else could come in and buy the park, change the rules. There was a park up in Belfast, I believe, exactly, it didn't have anything to do with 55 Roller. Somebody came in and bought the park, increased the rent, changed the rules, and said, if you don't like it, move out. And they cleaned out some people, and the rest of them probably were happy that they left. I don't know. But again, this is just putting me
However,
on even ground with the other parks. But why don't we vote and get on with this, because I have one more issue here tonight I
Well,
want to.
and could I just say one more thing?
Yeah.
It seems that, that this trailer park is a problem for a lot of people who live there, a lot of abutters, and it seems like it's not good for the town. And is there any way that we can request that the town, I don't know that the planning board can ask Mr. Best how do you get Mr. Best to go to an attorney, write up a list of rules, and have all the tenants sign it? Because to me, then at least you'd have a baseline of what's expected of your
Okay,
tenants.
this is,
And and the question isn't really for you, I wanted to ask,
Yeah,
I just wanna know, can we do that? Can the
No.
select board do that? Who does
no,
that?
it's Mr. Best's responsibility to
Okay.
operate his park legally.
Yeah,
With that said, there's 3 things I want to mention.
Mm-hmm.
In reference specifically to the age 55, there's one issue that we would need to find out about, which should be a condition of approval, and that is the status of the existing subsurface system. Can it handle a higher density of persons?
Okay.
Because the original plan, as you said, there are 2 bedrooms per. We're assuming that they made that assumption based on the 55-year age. So that's one, that
What does
directly
two-
relates.
What does 2 bedrooms, 40 units have to do with the age?
No, I'm assuming that that's how they did it, because typically you would use 3 bedrooms or a mix. And so
In
if
a
you're
trailer
using a 55 park, you're assuming a lower density of person. But we don't know that, so we would have to get that, a soil evaluator or an engineer to determine, to give us that data. So that directly relates to his request on that. The second issue, as the chair said, is there may be compliance issues with this park relating to, conditions or performance on the plan. And that would be a enforcement issue directly, if it, all right. And then the third issue, which isn't germane directly, as you said, to the application, is there's code violations. And that's under the purview of the town to enforce those, independent of whether you make requests to the board or not. And those are still pending on that.
We are working on, I've been working with them.
Right, but those are the three things, so.
Sure.
Directly, so I just wanted to frame that logically.
Yes.
And the 2 are enforcement issues, and 1 directly relates to the 55-year plus.
Well,
Right, well,
if I can just quickly jump on
Yes.
that. In this list of compliance, one thing that was requested by Bill Butler was the permit required to park be utilized for adults greater than 55 years old. Please confirm the ratio. This is an inquiry and is not a documented violation. I don't think he was aware that it was on the site plan at that time.
right.
But that was something noted back in June, and
Right.
I didn't follow up with it because by the time, the 30 days was up, Fred wanted to do
Okay.
this instead.
Well, you went where I was going to go, because of the 3 things that you mentioned, Bill, the one that is not, because many of the things, as Sarah has pointed out, many of the things we've talked about are actually irrelevant relative to the question. But what is very relevant to the question is we don't really know what the age composition of the park is. And it's really hard, if he's not, it's also hard to approve changing it just to accommodate the fact, if it's not in compliance with the original requirements of the approval. And, and I understand that if you hadn't put it in there, it may not have been an issue today, but it was in there, and it's our responsibility to make sure that there's compliance with the original approval. So, are we-
Chairman, I
It's
have
our
one quick
responsibility or
question.
it's Stan's
Oh, Scott, to
responsibility?
you, Max, does Mr. Best, is he issued a permit or a license from the town or the state to operate his mobile home park?
I can answer that question. I'm
Okay,
issued a
but
license
it's-
from the state of Maine.
Okay, and I'm just gonna use this because of my days in Portland. If you have a bar who wants to renew their license and they have 50 calls, in a set period of time, they can revoke that license or not renew it. Is that under the purview of the town? Or there's nothing in there?
We can't revoke it. We can take enforcement action to directly address violations, but we can't revoke his ability to operate the park. The state has some discretion on that, but it's not an open.
So once you have the
Yeah.
license or the permit, that's it,
They're very similar.
regardless of the number of complaints or this or that?
so I'd like to call for a motion to approve, which is the way we normally would do this, and then we can vote on whether we will approve this change to 55 or not. So I just want to make it clear that that's what we'd be doing. Is there any more questions or discussions?
I mean, change to remove it.
Right, so the motion would be to approve the change to remove the 55 or older. So we're clear what voting yea and nay means. Okay? So voting yes would approve his requested change. Voting no would mean to not allow the change. Okay?
How do we deal with the leftover questions?
Well, the leftover questions, as far as I can, other than, unless we were to decide to approve this with contingencies, and I haven't heard anybody suggest that for the moment.
Okay.
but-
I would offer one suggestion if you wanted to make a contingency. If somebody moves a trailer in the future, that's under 55 years of age, boy, this gets really strange though, that it only be a two-bedroom, because that's what it was approved for.
Oh, God.
Yeah.
But I think that's a can of worms too,
Yeah,
to try
so
to,
let's, yeah.
you know,
So,
So I feel
So-
uncomfortable doing it this way, but
which
let's go
would you-
ahead. Let's
how
go
would you
ahead.
rather do it?
I move to deny the request.
Okay, that motion has been made. Is there a second?
Second it.
Okay.
You're
Any
saying
other
no.
questions or
I'm
comments?
saying
When
no.
you're saying
He made
deny
a
the
motion
Move to
request,
deny the request.
that means no, it
Do you
doesn't,
agree?
Right.
it doesn't mean come again another
No.
time.
That's correct.
So there's been a motion made and seconded. Are there any amendments to the motion or suggestions? Other comments?
Do we all have to vote, Mr. Chairman, or do we, is
You
it?
can abstain if you want to abstain.
No, I'm just wondering how that,
They can't abstain, they cannot abstain.
no.
You can't,
They can only abstain if it's a personal, if he's.
Oh, yeah, no,
personally
it's,
involved.
well, that, the recusal, well, anyway, we'll
Okay.
argue that.
well, it would have been interesting, I mean, it's possibly to do this with a contingency, but, right now, Fred, I guess we don't believe that, a contingency would be followed through on. So we're having a little bit of a problem with all the stuff that's.
maybe make a suggestion. Why don't you vote to just table this until it's ever brought to you again? Just-
Well, we can always, this is always addressable. This doesn't last, this is a vote for today. And I would like to.
So it's not a permanent thing.
I would like to, since we have a motion made and seconded on the table, I would like to vote on it. So all in favor of the motion, say aye.
Could you repeat it again?
The motion is to deny the request to change the age limit. All those in favor of the motion, say aye.
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 All
That's
motion, all
unanimous.
opposed? Motion carries.
So I'm denied
You are denied this.
the right
change.
to make this request.
You're
Okay,
denied-
I'm okay with
Have
that.
to make the change.
I'm okay with that.
Can I ask the board, when you typically deny, we need to determine a finding of your reasons why you did that specifically? Just so we can put that on the record.
Okay,
And that would give him the opportunity, if he knows why it's denied.
Okay.
If he wanted to bring this back.
Okay.
What he would need to address.
so my.
But it would have to come back to the board, not to the
Yes.
appeals board.
So.
Okay, again,
If I try to capture that, and you guys can add to this, I find a couple things. One is there are a number of questions about compliance issues in the park with relative to buffer zone, and relative to the current age limit requirement. And there are a number of concerns amongst the abutters about the general aspects of the park that are affecting their neighborhood. That's what I would say.
And I think it was specifically increasing the percentage of tenants under 55 would exacerbate those issues, not alleviate.
Correct.
Scott, I didn't get your second one. I got that there were a number of questions about compliance with age limits and,
The other was buffer zone issues.
but there was something about a number of complaints. Was it from the audience?
From the audience.
Yes, complaints by the abutters on the general neighborhood aspect effect of the park.
There's a question in the audience?
Yes,
I just
Bob.
was wondering whether you'd want to add to that list the uncertainty as to the capability of the existing septic system to accommodate more density.
That's
That would be
fair.
an excellent addition, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you have that, Susan? And Max is writing as well? Got that? Okay. All right.
I thought it was Bob's suggestion.
No, but Max was writing it
Yeah, I'm
down.
writing
I was
it
just
too.
making sure it
Max
was
is making
captured.
notes too.
Oh,
Yeah,
good.
don't worry. Okay. So, my understanding now is you say you have something else.
I have a second issue.
Okay.
I think this is a lot easier, this one.
Well, we can hope so.
Here's the,
I'll try to explain it to you, Max, and then you can.
and you should all have
We were
the other
Yes?
one. Yep.
Yeah.
16 months in the planning board getting approval for this park, and Oh, let's see, yeah, I'll turn it this way. I had a sewer plan, an electrical plan, and then this general plan, this plan here. When the plan was submitted at the end for being signed, there were probably 7 or 8, I've got the receipts from my surveyor, and I couldn't find my original plan, I couldn't find my electrical plan, but we had this plan, and this lot showing this trailer was not on the sewer plan, was not on the water plan, the electrical plan, and there was a lot here that was supposed to be on here. There's a double meter box. So what I'm asking is that this be removed from this plan, and we just need to draw a line in here or put another little box here. And this went almost 14 years without anybody realizing it. And Daryl McKinney, the code guy, numbered all these lots. And this is now lot 6. And I don't know what this number is. No, this is lot 8. We want to create on paper lot 6 and remove this lot because it doesn't match the systems that are in place.
So what you're saying is what was built
The wrong plan was submitted to the town when they
From-
signed this.
from what was actually built. Gotcha.
Exactly.
Okay.
That's about the best way to
So
put it.
same Do you have number of that plan? units.
And it's still the same at 40 units. It's just this one is not supposed to be here.
It's supposed to be over here.
There's a lot of reasons not, because there's a transformer over here, and the wiring comes right through here to this next transformer. Would not be, to try to make this work, you'd have to put another septic tank in, another electrical outlet, and there's already this high voltage line going through here.
Well, and this, where you're adding it is within the grouping of all
Well,
the
it was
rest of
already
the-
on the electrical plan, and where did?
Okay.
Max
Max
has
just
it.
They have it in front of
Yep.
Okay.
So,
I think so, yeah.
so
So
what
we're
is-
just trying to,
Yeah, sure.
and we don't have the language on this. If you're in favor of us correcting this, I'll get the language on a plan so we can record it. And again, I'm looking forward to when I sell this, somebody's not trying to put a plan, that everything's here, but it's
Sure.
not on paper.
Sure, it should definitely be corrected. I don't,
That
So-
doesn't seem to be.
so, it's, so what is your suggestion? My first thought was you could produce a corrected plan and allow us that to.
Indicate this revision.
Right, that we're approving the, and we can
Correction.
approve the correction.
Correction,
Sure.
that's
The
exactly
only
it.
thing we would have, I'm assuming that lots 6 and 4 are conforming
Correct.
to the plan.
Yeah, and they were already, the space was there.
Yeah.
We had so many different plans and changes
Yeah.
through the planning board that when the time came, I don't know what happened. I didn't print it out. My surveyor printed it out, showed it to the, it just came. I got
Maybe the
signed.
board got the right one and the builder got the wrong one. Okay.
I don't know what
whatever.
happened, but I do know that Daryl McKinney is the one, and he started out numbering all the lots for the ambulance service so they could,
Well, I would just suggest then that the revised version that you supply, make sure that the numbers are correct with what
Right,
what
right.
fire and police have for the.
Exactly,
Okay.
exactly.
I would move that be accepted as defined, and we move forward.
Yep.
And again, what I'll do is, if the board's happy with this, if it's acceptable to Stan, Max, I'll just bring it down to him and he'll present it at the next meeting. I won't even show up.
Well, yeah, as a
It
point
just-
of
it
order,
just-
I think Bill can help us with there.
Yeah,
How
that's
would you?
perfectly acceptable if
Okay.
you approve it.
Yep.
I would recommend, though, that lot 30, which is going to be eliminated, that
Right.
there be a note on the revision. Former
Exactly.
Lot 30 is not a mobile home lot, or not to be developed.
Okay,
And,
okay.
So Scott,
Yep,
Fred mentioned that the electrical plan and the sewer plan are correct.
yeah.
see what I mean?
Yeah.
Why don't we sign one of those? Because that's the document that goes back to this point in time.
Yeah, but we're gonna want a new
Modified.
one of this anyway,
Okay.
because
And this
Can
will,
we
he
get them
still has
both?
to do something
As-
to be signed.
So we get them both, that shows, maybe we do
My
both of
father
them, that shows the
and the
reason
family
why
moved
we're
here in
doing it,
51.
not just the.
Right.
the
we'll,
backup
we'll
to it.
put
So-
language that will reference the electrical plan and the original approved plan. We'll come up with a language, it's getting late.
Okay, yeah, I don't,
Okay.
Mayflower.
I
since,
want to be
since,
sure I've got the change right. We're creating lot
I
6.
don't think we even need to vote on this tonight.
Correct,
We do need to
as
vote
shown
on
on the electrical plan.
But don't we have to sign his, when he comes in with it, we're gonna have to sign it.
He actually,
He has to put the language
from a little bit
so
south
he'll
of
bring the plan for
Quebec,
next meeting.
not quite out on the coast.
And then it'll be re-recorded.
We're voting on something we can't see that
If
way.
you don't, if you don't like it, you won't sign it. They'll have to revise it again.
And why wouldn't we just
So why wouldn't
vote
we
on
just
it
wait
next
till he
month?
comes with the new one for us to vote on? That's what I'm saying.
Fred won't
I
be
think that
here.
would save time and not have to worry. Bob?
Could you just please make sure that the new plan says on it 55 and over?
It'll be the same plan.
Yes, yes, I agree completely.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, we make sure that all the other stuff is on it. So,
Actually, my
in the-
suggestion was to attach the electrical plan as the basis for it, which probably has that as well, so. Can't do
You can
that.
reference that in the revisions.
This is good, Andy.
Okay, so you agree to this?
Principle, yeah,
But
bring
we
the
will,
documents
when we
forward.
see the documents with the change,
Yeah, and
we'll,
you'll sign it then.
we'll vote on them then, so that
Okay,
will
well,
save
again, I
time.
don't want to go through all of this, getting it ready if you're not
Yeah, but I-
understanding what this is.
Right, yeah, I think we
Okay,
do.
it's just an error somebody made somewhere.
Yeah,
And after 14 years, does
well,
anybody?
we wanted to conform with reality, so.
Yeah, okay.
All right,
All right,
thank you, sir.
thank you. Hey,
Okay.
I want you to know, this is not easy, any of this.
No,
Not easy
no,
at all.
I think we recognize that.
Well,
Thanks,
Okay,
Fred.
thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, everyone. We will move on to other business. And, excuse me. Hello, everybody. Yes, we have other business to move on to, but if you, could you bring your discussions to the other room? Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
oh, okay, well, we'll get the language.
Thank you for coming.
Yeah, run it by you, okay.
So we have a few other things.
I want you to know, I didn't know about this, about behind his trailer.
Yes, thank you.
Yes, please, thank you.
Okay, well, again, but I know in the buffer.
No, no, seriously.
Guys, take it outside.
We don't want to stop you from talking, but you
Well-
can't do it in here.
Okay, I'm just
Okay.
trying to find out what's going on.
Yep.
They don't tell me everything.
Well,
What else we got,
okay,
boss?
we have old business of which it says none, which I'm happy to read. And we have planning board meeting minutes from the 13th, which we've had available for a while. But if people aren't comfortable with immediately voting on a motion, I propose we table it, but I've read it, I've reviewed it. If everybody's happy with it, I'd be happy to
Just the telephone
have a
thing,
motion.
right?
Yeah.
Yep.
Is there a motion to approve the minutes as,
So moved.
okay, is there a second?
BB,
Motion made and seconded to
Who
approve.
seconded?
Yes,
Barbara?
to approve the minutes of the November 13th meeting. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion carried. Any other piece of business for tonight? Bill?
Max just asked me to bring up that we need to schedule a public hearing to review the changes for the marijuana one.
And I'm
We have to do that?
Hearing, yeah.
Oh, great.
Yeah, that's, the timeframe, it's the timeframe, the timeframe for the June town meeting.
we'll do it a little earlier than the next
Max is gonna
board
check
meeting.
the timeframe for the advertisement,
I've been
but just be
calling this my
aware that
entire
that's gonna
life,
have to be on.
and
Haven't even read
one
it.
of the biggest problems is just plain Congress doesn't have the
So,
knowledge base.
when is
to,
that likely
make
to be?
sound decisions.
We have to check the timeframe for the advertisement, so it might be the next meeting.
Okay. So, who will present this should the planning board needs to be presenting the change, which we had
Presenting of the change,
nothing to,
ordinance.
really nothing to do with?
You're just hosting the public hearing, that's all.
Sweet.
That's in, yeah.
Do I get to bring Manhattans and martinis, or?
Yeah, you better make sure they're non-alcoholic since one of your bosses right over there.
Are there any applicants?
She was nodding.
I wanted a Manhattan.
I do make a
You
mean
understand this is
Manhattan.
being recorded and everything.
Oh.
Well,
Are there any applicants next month?
Isn't that funny?
Let me quickly think. There is someone I need to follow up with because this was a time frame they wanted to present, but I don't have any applications in my office.
Can it be the same as the board meeting?
We just do it before the meeting.
Yep. If there is not,
5:30?
well, I think that's something to ask. I mean, right now I have no applicants. But if
Okay.
one person does come forward and say, hey, I want to present, do you want to just have the 6 to 7 o'clock period specifically for the ordinance change and then 7 on
sure,
would be?
that sounds,
And you
I'm up
can
with
end
that.
it early.
Sure.
Or
Yeah.
do you want to have it 5 to 6 for the presentation?
No, I don't want to start at 5. Yeah.
So we would start at 6 regardless.
I would prefer myself. So that we can do it that way.
What's the date?
What is the age?
So if we're hosting,
Oh,
You just accept comments.
Yes, you're supposed to provide,
I'm not sure exactly.
well, okay, but I can understand that, but what I was getting to is, do we have to have a quorum of the planning board to do that? Oh, okay, so we do have to be there, okay. I just,
And we're just hearing comments.
yeah,
well, yeah, and I would just present what the changes are. I believe I've shown you the changes last summer, actually. It's just removing the language for medical marijuana dispensary. So I'm just going through where it's referenced in the ordinance.
Okay.
And just saying that it's gonna be struck. And the purpose for it as well.
You could schedule like only a half hour,
yeah,
and if there's no comment, you could end the public hearing and then
okay.
go on to other
yeah.
business.
Well, we can, however long it takes, but,
Probably
yeah.
won't have a lot of people.
So if the public has more questions than just comments, who fields the questions?
I can field the questions if you would want me to do so.
Okay.
Yeah,
And-
Plan on it.
Yeah, plan on, so, so it's just striking that portion, and that was,
Correct.
that was voted on by the select board?
That
Salt
was
pond
a
geography?
recommendation made by the select board.
Is this salt
I think
pond,
a year ago today.
real estate?
Okay.
I have no idea. How should I know whether
Floating-
it's salt pond or
floating
not?
around
This has been
here.
on, this has been a delay for some time.
Okay.
I've never had a good planning board meeting to do this.
We have so many
Well,
good planning
Max will
board
have to
meetings.
tell you, where did
Come
these
on.
things come from?
Okay,
I don't know.
think those are-
anything else for tonight? Ted, you were gonna say something?
No,
Okay.
Those were the pictures given by
Chuck
Campbell for.
Oh,
Okay.
and does
Sarah,
this
the-
come
Yeah.
from Chuck?
The butters.
where are they located?
These gentlemen want to know where it is.
This came from Fred, I believe.
Yeah,
That came
They
from
want to
Fred.
know where the
Pictures
pictures are.
From Chuck Campbell.
Oh, where they're taking, where they are?
What is it a picture of?
So this is,
Cutting line.
It's along here.
yeah,
Between Chuck Campbell's and Fred Bass's
Oh,
trailer park.
okay.
This is a very, very minor question.
Where?
But Ted, did you,
loud out there.
when we voted on the minutes, did
Yes.
you abstain?
no,
But you should abstain because you weren't there.
fair enough.
Okay, good.
Overlooked that.
Okay,
Sorry.
Ted
He's
abstained.
always here in spirit.
Right, I know.
I was wondering about that too, is everybody here?
It would be better if you asked people to raise their hand rather than a voice vote, and then you can tell who's abstaining.
Oh,
That's
don't
clearer.
people usually say they're
People
abstaining?
usually raise their hand anyway, and I always do, so, but you're, okay.
Whether you're here or not.
All right, I'll try to make sure
Double
people
confirm.
I've
raise their
got my
hand.
head down and I'm writing, and I'm not
Well, if you
looking
have your
around.
head down and you're writing, you're not gonna be able to see whether they put their hands up anyway.
So if you abstain, you should say abstain.
Right.
Yeah.
We're gonna have to tell you. Let me just make it, if you are unclear, please just make sure to get, you've got everybody's vote correctly tallied.
Good piece down the
And
road.
if you missed a
I hope I
meeting, just
didn't-
say that you
Been there
abstained.
for
Yes.
30,
Hope I
We go
didn't
home
years.
now.
confuse things or
No, I thought your
Change the-
suggestion was very appropriate, if only for him to
To
realize
understand
that he
it.
has that as an option.
But not only that, but to move to deny rather than
Oh, no, that's fine.
vote
It just
down
may- if-
or move to
I
request,
find it,
or
it's
move to
very
approve.
confusing oftentimes, like,
Has
on,
there been a
when
motion
the
to adjourn
ballot,
yet?
where there are,
There
where
will be.
there are referendum votes,
Yeah.
and it's very unclear what, the way the referendum is worded, what you're actually
Yeah.
voting
Yeah.
yay or nay. So I
That's,
think
that's why I like to direct.
clarity is fine.
move
I
to
don't have a
deny.
problem with that.
Now I move to adjourn.
And is there a second?
Yes.
Being a motion for adjournment, not allowing any more discussion.
Well, actually, I have a 1-hour presentation.
Yeah, really. All those in favor of the motion, say aye and raise your hand.
Aye.
All opposed, motion carried.
I'm missing the championship